Greetings, friends, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Erudite Magic. I am your host, Jeff Kowalk. If you're just joining us, this channel is all about magic books. If you've been following along for the last several weeks, you'll know that we've been covering the Art of Astonishment trilogy. I've made study guides for books 1 and 2. Today, it's finally time to visit book 3. I'm not going to spend too much time revisiting the past. If you think you're interested in the series, you should definitely check out the videos I made for you on books 1 and 2. Each book has an assortment of different tricks that Paul Harris published in previous books, and this one has a ton of great material. I'm excited to share it with you. There will be timestamps down below, so feel free to jump around to whatever is exciting to you. Let's dive in. These books don't have a ton of mentalism in them, but there are some tricks that I thought belonged in the category mental magic, and here they are. The Anything deck is a magic trick and piece of mentalism. A person thinks of a small word, chooses a card, and then that word that they thought of helps you find their card, but not only that, it's found that a little wallet you brought out before the trick began, there are cards in the wallet with little letters printed on them that match the word that they were thinking of. There's a really great routine in here called the Hedonists Make All the Rules, which is Paul Harris's version of an equivoke routine. The performer writes down on a cocktail napkin or anything that happens to be handy, writes a prediction down, and then guides the participant through a thought process where they're writing things down and making choices, and in the end, the choices that they've made match what the performer has predicted for that participant. It's not necessarily groundbreaking, but it's certainly an interesting option to make a mind-blowing prediction when you're just at a restaurant sitting there with some friends. The Torn Mentalist is another one of these pieces that's kind of a hybrid between a card trick and a piece of mental magic, because the performer writes a prediction on the card box lid, tears it off of the box, and has the participant stab that card tab into a pack of playing cards. The magician then reveals that the prediction on the card tab matches the two adjacent cards to where the participant stabbed it in the pack. And as a magical kicker, the tab is restored onto the box. Bat fishing is a great piece of casual magic when you're sitting around the house in someone's living room or in an area like that with pillows and couches and things like that. You ask to borrow a dollar bill and you take out a pack of playing cards. The participant will deal down playing cards after mixing them up. Once the participant has 8 cards, you show them that those cards match the serial number on their borrowed bill. This is definitely not a piece that you're going to be performing on stage for a parlor-sized audience, but in intimate settings, this can be a really fun way to blow someone's mind. In the close-up section of the book, I have defined this in the past as tricks that can be done with everyday objects or anything essentially other than a pack of playing cards that aren't mentalism flavored. The thing I love about this section is that Paul Harris has typically thought of ways to do magic that most people haven't considered. For example, in Leaf, it's basically a torn and restored signed leaf. The performer tears a leaf off of a bush when they're outside with someone and writes down the initials of the participant on the underside. They go back over to the bush and visually restore that leaf onto that bush, and it has the participant's signature. As you can tell, this would be a reputation-making piece of magic that I'm sure people would talk about for years to come, and it's relatively easy to do. So you're going to want to check that one out for the next time you're at a garden party. Speaking of having things signed, in Sweet Stuff, the magician has the participant sign a coin and drops it into a folded bill. Some sugar packets are introduced, and the performer shows that the sugar from one of the packets has now traveled invisibly to the bill by shaking out some of the sugar, and then shows the surprising climax that the signed coin is now inside of one of the sugar packets with the rest of the sugar. I don't know if it gets any more magical than that. I'll remind you at this point that everything is simple to do, and none of this is going to require knuckle-busting sleights that are going to require months and months and months of practice. If you put in the average amount of work required, you will be able to perform these items in no time. I'm going to jump into a couple of items that come from The Secrets of the Astonishing Executive, and if you didn't watch last week's video, you need to watch the section where Leo Minor, the amazing Israeli mentalist, recommends this as one of his top books to read. You can get some of the content of that book right here in Art of Astonishment Book 3. The Breakroom Boredom Buster is a neat effect with some business cards, and if you're familiar with Larry Becker and Paul Curry's versions of Will the Cards Match, you're going to find a lot to like in this one, but it's done with business cards instead of playing cards, which is really just a genius move for operating in the real world and not always being reliant on a pack of playing cards. The Client Confidence Sugar Shocker. Yes, I thought so too. There is a lot of alliteration in The Secrets of the Astonishing Executive. Anyway, in the Client Confidence Sugar Shocker, you're able to predict a randomly chosen pack of sweeteners. I believe that at one point Penguin Magic was giving this away in one of their beginner magic DVDs, but you can learn it here and be prepared to impress and entertain your friends when you're out at a restaurant. The Instant Incompetency IQ Test, I will not be saying that 5 times fast, is Paul Harris's version of an old Vernon routine where the participant and the performer are following the same motions with some business cards, but when they're done, the participants' cards never match the same state as the performers. David Williamson also taught his version of this using jumbo cards at Abbott's last week, and as you can imagine, with the right personality and the right presentation, this can absolutely kill. So don't overlook it. Getting into what Paul Harris is probably best known for, cards. Paul Harris loves to use bizarre in the wording for his tricks, and this book is no different. In the bizarre Vanish, it's one more version of the bizarre twist, where the performer takes 3 cards and causes the participant's card to vanish in the participant's hands, sandwiched between 2 jokers. It's a really cool piece that, if you recall the words of Michael Amar and the magic of Michael Amar, that magic done in a participant's hands is always going to be remembered and have much more impact. So this is a neat way to take a little packet trick and turn it into something that the participant will never forget. In the Torn and Restored deck, Paul Harris takes 2 halves of decks and restores them into a full-size complete deck ready for you to perform. So this would be a great introduction piece. It is essentially his version of Brother John Hammond's Micro Macro. Speaking of tricks using decks that are cut in half, Paul Harris gives you an impromptu version of his screwed deck, which is a marketed effect. In this version, cards are screwed together and they're seen to be face up and face down. Not really a triumph routine, but you can actually see that the deck is twisted, and he untwists it to allow himself to go into performing whatever card tricks you want to do with a full deck. Unlike the marketed version, this can be done with a borrowed deck if you have just a little bit of time for private preparation. And of course, if you're doing it with your own deck, it'd be no problem to set this up with 30 to 60 seconds of advanced preparation. Perhaps one of the tricks that Paul Harris is best known for is Whack Your Pack, aka Reflex. If you haven't seen this trick, you owe it to yourself to watch someone do it. It's so much fun. This trick is a game between the participant and the performer where you're showing the cards to the participant, placing them down on the table, and then trying to slap your hand down on their actual card before they can. Of course, the participant always loses, and when they lift their hand on what they thought was their card, it turns out that it wasn't their card, and the performer has their card basically anywhere you want. It's a ton of fun, and it's a great way to not just have the participant pick a card and I'll find it. It's way more interactive and fun, and that's what I think is so cool, is that you're not really focused on the traditional pick a card. It's a game, and everyone will be involved and attentive and loving what you're doing if you perform this trick. Subsequent and adjacent to Reflex, David Harkey offers his version called Juke, which allows even more magic to happen because the performer will show that all of the cards have changed into the participant's card, and the one card that the performer thought was their card initially at the beginning of the routine is actually under their hand now. I know that sounds a little bit confusing, but it's very similar to Reflex. The effect is almost the same. You just get a few more magical climaxes, all done impromptu with a shuffled deck. The Mondo Nifty Invisible Palm is Paul Harris's take on the Open Traveler's plot. And if you don't know that, what it means is that cards are traveling from the pack or the little packet of cards to the table invisibly. And the addition here in this version is that he doesn't do it with the aces, so you don't spend a lot of extra time proving that the aces are here before the cards travel. It's just a lot of fun and easy to do. So if you've been looking for a version of Open Travelers to perform, this one is pretty nifty. Going back to book 1, he had the Las Vegas Leaper, which is his version of a cards across routine, super easy to do. And in this book, he gives you Big Time Leaper, which basically has the same effect as the first one, that 3 cards travel invisibly from the pack to the participant who counted the cards themselves. But this version has the added benefit that after you've made 3 cards travel invisibly to under their seat or in their pocket or wherever it is that they chose to keep those cards, you then cause 15 or so more cards to travel to their packet of cards. Sounds like it should be difficult, but I promise you it's not. It's actually super easy. So while Cards Across is a classic plot, he also offers his take on the other true classic of card magic, Out of This World, and his version is called Galaxy. It's done with the entire deck. It can be riffle shuffled on the table before you get started. The participant does all of the dealing, and in the end, the entire deck is separated, the reds and the blacks, and your participant is the hero, which is always a cool way to leave a trick. Finally, the Voodoo Card is a contribution by Guy Hollingworth. You may have seen this in other places, but it's a really fun effect. A participant chooses a card, and you find that your deck has a sympathetic card, say, for example, the 2 of Hearts and the 2 of Diamonds. You tear the corner off of the 2 of Hearts, the corner is now torn off the 2 of Diamonds. You burn the 2 of Hearts, you now find that the 2 of Diamonds is burned. So there's a lot of magic happening, very surprising, and totally different from anything else your participants have ever seen. And if you haven't gathered that from everything I've told you about Paul Harris's material, that's one of the reasons that I love it, is that it is unlike anything else your participants will likely have seen. You're mutilating cards, you're restoring cards that have been cut in half. You're playing games with your participants. And in fact, there's a section in here from the Magical Arts Journal by Michael Amar, this section that Paul Harris contributed, and he discusses that it would be easy to simply try to do the tricks exactly as Paul Harris does. And he admits that if you do that, you could do a lot worse. But if you focus on the presentation, the pattern, the order of things, why he's doing what he's doing, you're going to get an incredible lesson on how a professional introduces the subject of magic to the participants and gets them warmed up, enjoying the performance and the performer, and ready and receptive for more magic. If I haven't already convinced you by now to buy the Art of Astonishment books, I don't know what else there is to say. There are so many professionals who have made their living performing the items in these books, and I myself have performed a ton of these items for friends, family, and even some paying gigs. I just got a text from a performing pro in the Cleveland, Ohio area, and he was telling me how he met his wife and performed over 8 hours of tricks from the Art of Astonishment trilogy. And yes, they're still very happily married. Dreams do come true, but only if you perform Paul Harris material. The books are sometimes silly and funny, but always practical with the magic. The books are normally just shy of $150 with all 3 books together, because I think each book retails for around $45 new. But this week, if you apply the code ASTONISHMENT, you can save 10% off and get these really for a song. Don has these books listed, I think, for $125 for all 3 books new, and that's an incredible price on its own. But this week, if you apply that code ASTONISHMENT, you'll save 10% and be able to get them shipped for free in the continental United States for $112.50. I know I have a lot of international viewers out there, so if you see something on Don's website that you like, please reach out to Don, write him an email. He charges only the actual shipping to get it to you, so don't think that it won't work. reach out and see if he can make it right for you. But for everyone, please stop by and check out Don's website this week. I think that the 10% is really a great savings, and it applies to almost everything on the website. He sells tricks, props, books, DVDs, so there's lots to like there. Check it out and tell him that I sent you. As always, I appreciate you watching, and I have had so much fun talking about the Art of Astonishment. Please sound off down below with what your favorite tricks from the Art of Astonishment are and what you've been able to get from this study guide or the books. I am planning to be at Magi Fest, so if you see me there, please don't hesitate to say hello. I always love to connect with other magicians, and it's fun to know that people are watching and getting value out of this. Have a great week, everyone, and until next time, keep reading.